Passengers pick up scattered items on the beach, while Jack stitches up a bailiff who keeps telling him that she is dangerous and needs to be returned. Jack thinks the man is delusional, then the bailiff asks him to pull a flyer out of his jacket pocket. There Jack saw a picture of Kate. At this time she and the others were coming down the mountain. Most had decided that they should make camp, for it would soon be dark. James, who everyone calls Sawyer, thinks they have nothing to fear, but everyone insisted on resting. As darkness falls, Saeed tries to reconstruct the chronology of the accident. They are probably 1,000 miles off course. Sawyer recalls a signal received over the radio that has been repeated for 16 years. Saeed suggests that we not tell the others so as not to create panic. Besides, they haven't figured out what they're dealing with yet. Hugo asks Jack what the huge thing is that is felling the trees in the jungle. There is no answer. Hugo also sees a photo of Kate under arrest, which shocks him. At night Saeed woke up to the fact that Boone had stolen a gun. His excuse was that he just wanted to protect everyone else. Boone didn't want to part with the gun, but at the insistence of his companions he did give it to Kate, who was immersed in memories. She spent the night in someone else's barn. A man named Ray wondered how she got in. The girl said her name was Ani. Ray took pity and fed her. She told a story about how after college she decided to see the world, but then she ran out of money. Ray offered her a job on a farm and in return she would get a roof over her head and a salary. On their return, Saeed told the passengers that they had failed to send a distress signal, but that they would try again. Saeed also suggested that they split into several groups to divide up the duties. Meanwhile, Kate told Jack about a mysterious message in French, broadcast for 16 years. Kate also wondered if the injured man had regained consciousness. Jack lied that the patient only woke up for a few seconds and said nothing. Hugo fears that Kate might actually be dangerous, but Jack doesn't want to get into it. He tells Hugo to keep an eye on the patient, and he goes to the plane himself to try to find antibiotics. There Jack found Sawyer looking for cigarettes, booze, and other valuables. He didn't think it was nefarious, since they are all on the verge of death. Such a free life is to Sawyer's liking. Charlie helped Claire move the luggage. Jin Soo Kwon doesn't like the fact that his wife walks around in dirty clothes and with a dirty face. Meanwhile, Claire admits to Charlie that she is single. In the meantime, Kate decides to start a conversation with Hugo, who is horrified to see she has a gun. It started to rain. Taking advantage of the commotion, Kate came to the unconscious bailiff, remembering how she had decided to leave Ray quietly. She had lived here for 3 months, and Ray had convinced her to stay one more night, promising to take her to town in the morning. The bailiff woke up and attacked Kate. Jack ran in and dragged him away, trying to somehow relieve the patient's condition. He had a very high fever. He had 2 or 3 days to live. Kate offered to put him out of his misery, then Jack confessed that he had seen her picture at the bailiff's. He made it clear that human life was above everything to him. Kate recalls Ray driving her to town. Suddenly she saw a familiar car and realized that Ray had turned her in. He confirmed it, saying he had found out about her criminal past a few days earlier. The cops promised a generous reward. The bailiff was ready to arrest her. Michael asked his son about John Locke. Walt said that some kind of miracle had happened to Mr. Locke. Michael tries to get close to his son by promising to find his dog Vincent. He had to keep his promise and go into the jungle. Suddenly frightening noises began to be heard in the grass. Michael ran away in a panic. Soon he saw a half-naked Sun Wha Quan. Michael was as confused as the woman. Charlie sat down with John Locke, who was making a whistle out of wood. The cries of the dying bailiff echoed across the beach. Jack was doing the best he could, but no one believed in success. Sawyer decided to thank Kate for taking his gun. If he had had the gun, he would have put that man out of his misery. Probably a lot of people on the beach shared that opinion. Jack continued to nurse the patient. From the last of his strength, the bailiff said that Kate was a great manipulator and he needed to talk to her urgently. Meanwhile, Kate remembered again how she had jumped Ray. He lost control and the car went off the road. Kate did pull the unconscious farmer out of the burning car, but then the bailiff pointed a gun at her. In the present tense, he was interested in what she wanted to ask him before the accident. It turns out that she wanted to make sure that Ray would be paid a reward. The bailiff also had a request, to help him end his suffering. Hugo is perplexed as to why Jack left Kate with the patient, since she has a gun. Hearing this, Jack rushed to the patient. There was the sound of a gunshot. Kate came out of the tent, and then Sawyer came out with a gun in his hand. He said the man begged him to do it. The wheezing sounded again from the tent. It turned out that the man had survived. Hugo and Sawyer were horrified by this. Jack chased Sawyer away, who was in a state of shock and could not even smoke. When the patient passed away, Jack went out, too. John Locke was sitting quietly on the shore with his whistle, and a dog ran out to him. John suggested that Michael tell his son that he had found Vincent himself. Kate sat down with Jack. She wanted to tell him exactly what she'd been arrested for, but he wasn't interested. It didn't matter now what each of them had been doing before the crash. All of them died 3 days ago, and now they are starting life anew. In spite of the sadness of their situation, the passengers tried not to lose heart and to stick together, hoping for a speedy rescue. And only John Locke was very thoughtful. On the day of the crash, he woke up on the sand and realized he could walk again. At night, Vincent barked loudly, waking up disgruntled people. But then everyone realized that the dog was attracted by the ominous sounds coming from the plane. Jack and the others, with flashlights on, went to check. Inside was something with yellow eyes. The people began to scatter in panic, and the strange creatures went into the jungle. John Locke realized they were boars. Obviously, the survivors need to remove the bodies. Without shovels, they can't bury everyone, so they have to burn the dead in the fuselage. Saeed wants to try to find the source of the very signal they caught on the mountain. For this purpose he made an antenna. Michael does not want to let his son go, but he prefers to spend time with Mr. Locke. Hugo and James quarrel over the last packet of chips. The passengers suddenly realize that they have no more food. Saeed urges everyone to be calm, and John Locke offers to hunt boars. He has a whole set of hunting knives, which he had checked in his luggage during the flight. John recalls how he received a call. Someone on the phone called him a colonel. But then John was interrupted by his boss, who told him to hurry up with his reports. Before he left, he sarcastically called John a colonel. Kate intends to go hunting in the jungle. Saeed has given her a device that can pick up the signal. Michael asks Sun Wukong to watch his son while he hunts. Even though the woman doesn't know English, she seemed to understand everything. Claire found a photo album of young people who were about to get married and died on a plane. Claire insists that a memorial service be held and the names of the dead read out, since they found all the passports. Boone tells Shannon that he is worried about Rose, who has lost her husband and has not uttered a word since the accident. He also believes that his sister will not survive without him, not even able to get food for herself. Group of hunters led by John Locke is on the trail of wild boars. In the meantime, Charlie tries to seclude herself to take substances, but he is interrupted by Shannon. She calls the guy out for a walk and offers to go fishing. Boone tells Jack that it would be good to talk to Rose, since she is not eating or drinking. Even though Jack is very busy, he decides to talk to the woman and get her some water. Rose remains silent. Michael told the companions about his son, with whom he had had little contact since he had been living with his mother in Australia. They were interrupted by sounds that appeared to belong to a boar. Because Michael was talking very loudly, the animal attacked him and the others. Lying in the grass, John Locke recalls how the boss scoffed at his playing colonel, even though he had never served. Also, the chief learned that John was going on a trip to Australia. In his opinion, John is living in a fantasy world and will not be able to do so because he is disabled. In the present, John mistakenly called Kate by the name of Helen. He told her to take Michael to the camp, and he intended to go after the boar alone. Hugo tried to help Charlie with the fishing, but nothing came of it. Meanwhile, Claire found an envelope with Saeed's name on it and handed it to him. Inside were photographs of a young woman. Rose finally spoke. Her husband always gave her his wedding ring before he got on the plane, and she wore it on a chain. Jack explained to Rose that she was suffering from post-traumatic shock. The woman called him a very kind man. John recalls telling Helen over the phone that he was ready to fulfill his dream and go on a big Australian camping trip. He bought 2 tickets, but Helen announced that they should end their relationship. As a therapist, she shouldn't have started an affair with her patient. Kate, who was dragging Michael along, decided to climb a tree and use the antenna to try to pick up a signal from there. But when a scary sound was heard, she dropped the antenna. The grass stirred. John thought he had come upon a boar, but there was something huge and sinister among the trees. Sawyer gave Claire the passports he had recently found. Out of the woods came Michael and Kate. Walt is concerned that Mr. Locke never returned. Since the hunt was not successful, there was nothing to eat. However, Charlie was able to catch the fish. Boone said that Shannon was being mean by using Charlie for her own purposes. Jack invited Rose to a memorial service to say a few words about her late husband, but suddenly Rose stated that her husband was alive, as were all those in the tail section of the plane. Maybe they think those on the beach are dead, too. A bewildered Jack saw a man in a suit in the distance, but when he looked there a second time, there was no one there. Kate returned the broken antenna to Saeed. He doesn't have the tools to fix it, but he can't be discouraged. Kate also informed Jack that something had chased Locke in the jungle. Jack saw the man again in the distance and went into the woods. Suddenly John came out to them, dragging a boar. Claire read out the names of the dead at the burning fuselage. While everyone was distracted, Charlie was consuming substances. Jack sat apart from everyone else. Michael asked John if he had seen the monster in the jungle. He said he didn't see. John recalls how the guide refuses to take him on the hike because of his medical condition. John did not tell him in advance that he was moving with the help of a wheelchair. He was never able to convince the guide that he was able to go on the hike, but it was as if the island had healed him. John could walk again. In the present, he watches his wheelchair go up in flames. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.